Hi, this is Naomi with Sword and Steel, and today we're going to be learning about charging, the reinforcement step, and points. I hope you enjoy. In Lesson 1, we learned about the movement phase, and in Lesson 2, we learned all about shooting. After the shooting phase, we are going to enter the charge phase. But before I touch on that charge phase, I'd like to talk to you about the reinforcement step in the movement phase. I mentioned in the first lesson that the movement phase has 2 steps. Step 1, move units, which is what we discussed in the first lesson, and Step 2, reinforcements. Commonly, you will find units that are strong in hand-to-hand combat with an ability like Deep Strike that lets you keep models out of play at the beginning of the game so that you can add them in to the battlefield later and close enough to the enemy models that they can charge and fight in the same turn that they appeared. This means that they are protected from being shot at by not having to travel across an open battlefield to reach their targets. Now, specifically, Deep Strike says, during the declare battle formation step, which is simply as you are deploying your miniatures at the beginning of the game, if every model in a unit has this ability being Deep Strike, you can set it up in reserves instead of setting it up on the battlefield. If you do, in the reinforcement step of one of your movement phases, you can set up this unit anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 9 inches horizontally away from all enemy models. Once you know how charging works, you'll see why they would benefit from being set up only 9 inches from enemy models. Now, let's clarify exactly how the reinforcement steps works before we delve into the charge phase. In the reinforcement step of your movement phase, which is after you've moved all of your units that turn, if you have any reserve units in your army, you can select one or more of them and set them up on the battlefield one at a time. Reserve units always count as having made a normal move in the turn that they are set up, and so cannot move further during this phase. Otherwise, though, they can act normally that turn. They can shoot, they can declare a charge, they can fight, and so on. Any reserve units not set up by the end of the battle counts as destroyed, so don't forget about them. They're important. So, the charge phase. Like the other phases, there is a sequence to follow. First, you select an eligible unit, then you select the targets of that unit, then you make a charge roll, and if that roll is successful, you make your charge move. And you will repeat that sequence for every eligible unit that you want to charge with. A unit is eligible to charge when it's within 12 inches of one or more enemy units at the start of your charge phase, unless your unit advanced or fell back this turn, unless your unit is already within engagement range of any enemy models, or your unit is an aircraft model. Aircraft models have their own section in the rules, so if you're thinking to include an aircraft into your army, be sure you know what to expect when you use one. I'll touch on them more in a later video. Once you've chosen your unit that you want to charge with, select one or more enemy units within 12 inches to be the target of your charge, whether they are visible to your unit or not. Once your target or targets are chosen, roll 2d6, and the sum of that roll is the maximum number of inches each model in your unit can be moved in their charge move. However, first you have to check if the charge roll is successful. Generally, the charging player will check to see what number is a success before rolling the dice by measuring the distance from the models they want to charge to the potential targets of the charge. So you know before you roll how likely it is your charge roll will be successful. And it will also tell you whether you want to add more than one target to the charge depending on where they are. The charge roll is only successful if the charging unit can end that move within engagement range of every unit that you selected as the target of their charge, and without moving within engagement range of any enemy units that were not the target of the charge, and still maintain unit coherency of your unit. If any of those conditions cannot be met, then the charge has failed, and the charging unit stays exactly where it is and cannot move further this phase. If all conditions are met, though, then the charge is a success, and you can proceed to move each model into base-to-base contact with their target as possible. And by base-to-base contact, I mean as close as possible. In most cases, that will mean that the model's bases are going to be touching, but in the instances of when they don't have bases, or the bases aren't visible under the bulk of the model, or their charge distance doesn't quite get them close enough, then base-to-base contact means as close as they could possibly be. If you can't move all models into base-to-base contact while still meeting the conditions of a successful charge, then you still have to at least move them closer to the target unit than they were before the charge began. And don't worry if you can't get them right into engagement range for the upcoming fight, because in the fight phase you'll be able to pile in and move them an additional 3 inches to help coordinate your attacks better. And I'll go into that more in the next lesson. Models that successfully charge gain the ability Fights First for the rest of the turn. I'll go over it more thoroughly in the next lesson, but as you might be able to guess, models with the Fights First ability will be among the first to attack in the fight phase before other models that don't have this ability. Now, let's consider charging over terrain. Charging over terrain is all but identical to moving over terrain. You can charge over terrain of 2 inches or less in height as if it were not there. You can charge up or down terrain higher than 2 inches, as long as you measure the vertical distance along with the horizontal distance in your charge. And though there isn't currently an example I can see to clarify this wording, unless otherwise stated, a model can be moved over a terrain feature when it makes a charge move, but not through it. I would expect that means that a unit cannot pass into a terrain feature with a footprint, that is one that obscures visibly from the outside, and go right out the other side, all as part of the one charge. So I would say around, over, into, out of, but not completely through. That's my assumption of what that particular rule means. If it becomes clarified in the future, I'll add the clarification in the description of this video. You also cannot end your charge mid-climb, just like you can't end your move mid-climb. Another item we haven't gone over fully yet is how flying units move or charge over terrain. Flyers, unlike ground units, move and charge over terrain in a direct path from surface to surface, rather than going across horizontally and straight up and down. They cannot end their move or charge in mid-air. They must end their move with their base entirely on a flat surface and not on top of any other model. But they can move and charge over enemy models and friendly models alike as if they weren't there, as long as they don't end their move in engagement range of any enemy models. But of course they can end their charge within engagement range. Alright, it's time for your third mission. But before that, let me talk about a little thing called points. Every unit, every model that you have in your army costs a certain amount of points to deploy onto the battlefield. Games of 40k are generally played with both players having armies of the same amount or as close to the same amount as possible to encourage a fair game. Right now, the points cost for your models can be found in the Munitorum field manual, which you can download for free on the Warhammer community website right now. If this changes, I'll add a new link to the description to where the latest points values can be found, or you can simply comment below and receive help that way. So, mission 3, moving the goalposts. The objective of this mission is to familiarize yourself with charging and how likely you will succeed your charge roll, as well as getting used to the costs of your various units. First, pick 3 units from your army that you want to play with. You're going to be playing 3 games in this mission. Game 1 will use the cheapest single unit, Game 2 with the second cheapest single unit, and Game 3 with the most expensive of those units. This is just to get you accustomed to your various units and seeing what their strengths and limitations are while practicing what we've learned so far. If this unit has ranged weapons, then practice your shots at the same time by adding a big meaty model or unit on one side of the board that costs double or triple the amount of points as your unit on the battlefield, whichever you like. It doesn't matter if you don't have the actual model or not, as long as you have access to its datasheet. It's just a dummy version anyway, and the point is to familiarize yourself with your unit's rules and shooting. Now set up 4 sets of other dummies down the center of your battlefield. It doesn't matter what they are, these will be the targets of your charge. The first set will be 4 inches from your unit and 2 inches apart from each other. The second will be 6 inches from your unit and 2 inches apart from each other. The third will be 9 inches from your unit and 2 inches apart from each other. And the fourth set will be 12 inches from your unit and 2 inches apart from each other. You can easily make it more complex by instead placing the units around or on top of terrain and seeing how that affects your ability to charge them. So to play this mission, all you have to do is charge one and only one of the 2 models in each set. First the 4, then the 6, then the 9, and then the 12 inches away from your unit. Additionally, bringing down the big baddie on your left while you're at it. Each time you successfully charge one of the set, simply remove those 2 models from the battlefield and restart your unit back at the edge of the board, and then roll to charge the next set. If you fail your charge, keep rolling until you succeed. Notice that as your target becomes further and further away from your unit, you will fail your charge roll more often. It's something you'll need to consider when you're in a real battle, so having a good idea of your chances of success will help you move and charge wisely. Good luck! Remember to comment below if you had any questions as we're getting along in these lessons. If you missed any of the lessons beforehand, they are going to be in the description, so make certain to check them out, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye! Thanks as always to the patrons that support the channel and the YouTube members. I really appreciate your support, and as you can see, I am adding to my collection of things that we can add to our videos. I hope you have enjoyed them, as I have way too much.